Ahoy, welcome back to another video. This time with my early impressions about 10 hours in to the recently released Enotria The Last Song. Quick background on this game, it's an action-adventure RPG Souls-like from Jyamma Games, an Italian independent studio that came out this month, September of 2024. The setting is heavily inspired by Italian folklore, which makes sense, it being from an Italian studio. He plays the maskless one, going around a sunlit Italian setting, killing monsters, crazed actors. It's all one big screenplay, big scary bosses, the whole 9 yards. If you played a Souls-like game before, you're going to know the loop here, but this game does have some new ideas to offer as well that I'll get into. The big crux of this game is some people got really greedy and power hungry, and it's a staple for video games like this. It's your job as the maskless one to go take them out, make them come to, take their masks, and claim their roles in the stage that is Enotria The Last Song. Now, before we get into the game itself, please, if you want to help me out, give a thumbs up down below. Consider subscribing, all the generic YouTube jargon. It really does mean a lot and helps keep me motivated to keep making videos like this. All right, let's get into the game. Let's start with the main ingredient for any game in this genre, the combat. If you're going to make a Souls-like, and you're going to want people to enjoy playing that Souls-like, you're going to need to really focus on making sure you have rewarding, fun combat. And I think Enotria mostly succeeds here. Let's start off with the basics. You have your heavy and light attacks with your R1 and R2 like you'd expect. You dodge with circle. You have a limited use flask that heals you and refills when you rest at a checkpoint. And one of my favorite parts of the mechanics, you have a parry. This parry, if performed correctly, almost acts like the parry from Sekiro. Basically, it builds up a stagger meter that, once filled, can knock the enemies into a state where you can get a really big free hit on them. But if you don't nail the timing of the parry, you still get some stagger buildup, but instead of taking no damage, you take less damage. You can basically think of this almost like a block. So good timing equals lots of stagger buildup on the enemy and no damage for you, and a not so good timing is less stagger buildup and some damage to you, but better than just getting schlapped. There are tons of different weapons to find in Enotria, coming in different shapes and sizes and use cases. Swords, polearms, maces, big hammers, etc. Short swords swing faster. The polearms, my favorite weapon so far, have longer reach. And then you have your maces and hammers doing lots of stagger damage, but I haven't used those a whole lot just yet. Weapons can be upgraded using surprisingly plentiful upgrade materials that improve their raw damage, their elemental damage, and their weapon scaling. Basically how well the weapon improves in relation to the stats your character has. Now, so far, a lot of these mechanics are going to sound real familiar if you're a fan of FromSoft's games, and so far for me, as a fan of those games, I have felt right at home with Enotria. The familiar and fun loop of killing enemies, exploring interweaving levels full of secrets and surprises, and clawing your way to the next checkpoint is here in this game, and I think it's actually really good so far. Needless to say, this game does offer some new twists of its own, however, the main one being the mask system. While you are the maskless one, you will get masks from certain enemies and bosses that you can equip and change your appearance and your stats. The idea with these masks is to create 3 different builds. So loadout 1, 2, and 3 would have a different mask, offering different stats, and has a different weapon and skills equipped to them. And then in battle, with a touch of a button, in this case the down D-pad, you can switch to another build entirely by just switching those masks. This is a neat idea and allows for a high level of creativity and player expression, but I find myself not using that mechanic all that often. I just kind of stick with the build I'm currently using. There are many reasons for this in my opinion. 1, I am dumb, and I cannot trust myself to think while trying to fight a tough enemy. 2, I just like using the weapon and abilities I'm comfortable with and don't want to spend time learning another moveset. And 3, overall I'm just forgetful, and I just fall into a state where I feel like I'm just playing Dark Souls, and I forget altogether I can switch to another build at literally any moment. Another cool mechanic that you can't really ignore, and I'm still trying to build my understanding of, is the way this game handles status conditions. There are 4 of them, at least 4 of them that they've shown me so far, and each of them is weak to another, almost kind of like Pokemon. So you've got your purple wine drunk, which is strong against the green poison. The green poison beats the radiant light, and the radiant light beats the wicked red, and the wicked red is strong against enemies with the purple drunk status. I could not tell you the names of these off the top of my head. They're all in Italian for the most part. But basically, you have the purple wine drunk status that raises your damage taken and the damage you deal while also increasing stamina regen. The radiant light status makes you heal over time, but also leaves you susceptible to exploding if you're hit while having that status. The poison status does about what you'd expect, taking damage over time. And then there's that red wicked status that gives you increased elemental damage, but allows enemies to heal when they hit you. Each effect has pros and cons to the person inflicted, and each effect can be on either you or the enemy. I think, while a little complicated and a lot to take in, this is an interesting way to tackle status conditions to where they aren't just bad for you. Overall, I think the combat is pretty solid. For the most part, it does kind of just feel like Dark Souls, but I think there are some complaints that are worth bringing up, so let's get into those. So far, like I mentioned, I've really enjoyed using the polearms. I got a boss weapon early on that has been really strong, has a heavy attack that does a 360 spin, hitting anything in a wide radius of me. And sure, I think most importantly, I found a weapon that feels fun and I enjoy using. But I've also just been kicking enemies' teeth in with this thing, and the plentiful upgrade resources has allowed me to upgrade it very quickly in my opinion. I haven't really had a good reason to stop using this weapon other than just making myself decide to try something new. So I wish there was a little bit more push for me to need to use something new for different situations. The weapon isn't perfect though. It's a little on the slower side, so sometimes I get in a frustrating loop where I get hit by an enemy and I try to retaliate, but their follow-up attack is a little bit faster than mine, so I get hit again, and then I get mad and I try to hit them, but once again, they're faster, and then I have to just accept that I have to disengage them and try to turn the tables with them with a dodge or a parry. So I guess there's some balance, even if it's rare and frustrating when I'm on the losing end. Now, outside of the moment-to-moment gameplay combat, there is another key ingredient to the Souls formula, and that is the storytelling and the lore. Enotria takes a similar path from FromSoft inspirations. The game starts with a cutscene shouting out all the bad guys you're going to go out to hunt down, sets up a real dreary world and hard times, and labels you as the nobody rising up to take out these godlike power-hungry beings. Where in From Games, you'll be known as the Chosen Undead, the Bearer of the Curse, the Ashen One, perhaps the Tarnished. In Enotria, you are the Maskless. I do get a kick out of these titles bestowed upon the player to show they've come from nothing and they have to rise up to the challenge in front of them. And Enotria does take another page out of FromSoft's book by providing tons of extra lore tidbits to read via item descriptions. Whether it be something significant or just a tiny bit of world building, I always enjoy reading the descriptions of the new items in my inventory, and especially my new weapons I pick up in these games. Enotria also takes it one step further and provides a whole compendium full of additional information you get either from just picking up a note on the ground or from completing in-game challenges like killing X number of a certain enemy. That being said though, I'll admit, even after reading a fair bit of the compendium entries and the weapon descriptions, I can't say I have a great grip on the story being told here, and that very well might just be not a fault of the game. It might probably just be me. Honestly, even in the games like Dark Souls 3 or Elden Ring that I love so much for their stories and lore, I have to go get debriefed from a much more intelligent YouTuber breaking down all the details for me. So once I roll the credits in this game, I'll look back and see if I can find a good explainer video for the story and see if I can't get a better appreciation during New Game Plus. Let's get into some of the nitty gritty. I've been playing this game on performance mode for the better frame rate, which is typically what I gravitate to when I have a choice. And even still, I think the game looks pretty solid from a visual standpoint. I'm normally pretty easy to please in this regard, and I tend to only focus my attention on my player character and what I'm running towards or engaged in combat with. And with those blinders on, I think Enotria looks great. If I really focus on the backgrounds though, to try to take in the landscape, there are definitely some underdeveloped backgrounds. Once again, for someone like me that isn't really a huge deal breaker for me, leave it to preference, I'd say, but if you want to take in the vistas when you get a nice overlook, maybe switch it to graphics mode for a bit. All that being said, most of my time spent in this game has been rock solid performance-wise. Consistent frame rate, everything working like you'd expect, pretty snappy menus and menu selections. There have been a couple bugs though that I have noticed. Occasionally an enemy will bug out with their AI for a few seconds and just kind of stand there. This has happened maybe 2 to 3 times with regular enemies and even once with a boss, but it was never really anything that took me all the way out of it. Some other quirks come from enemy animations in general. Some enemy attacks can have a pretty rigid, jerky animation, and every once in a while they will come from a slow recovery animation from one move, and then they'll just really quickly jerk into the next attacking animation in a manner that kind of catches you off guard and doesn't feel quite right. This honestly kind of feels like a mixture of a performance bug and the aforementioned rigid animations. Luckily though, for the most important person on screen, you, the player character, I always felt smooth and fun to control. Now, if there's one single high point I would like to emphasize in this video for this game, if I had to pick only one, it would be the exploration. The Souls genre is known for the tough but rewarding combat, the complex, deep lore, but also, very importantly, the great level design, and that's where I think Enotria is at its best. I'm not going to sit here and act like they're revolutionizing the genre, but if you changed the filter and aesthetic and told me this I was just playing Dark Souls when I was running through some of these areas, I would not really be able to tell the difference. Running through these first few areas, constantly finding secrets and constantly finding optional paths has really kept a smile on my face. There's been multiple times in these first 10 hours or so where I had 2 or 3 paths to go explore at any one time, not just one critical path and one short dead end with a chest or something silly like that. Legitimate explorable paths that lead to new areas, and in some cases optional bosses, or at least optional as far as I can tell so far. So even if the combat isn't always clicking with me, I'm still thoroughly enjoying looking through every nook and cranny and seeing what the game has in store for me. So far, my first 10 hours, I'm really actually enjoying Enotria the Last Song. Jyamma Games is hitting a lot of the expected notes you'd hope to find in a FromSoft-like game, with a familiar feeling combat and upgrade systems, the strong exploration and sense of discovery, a legitimate effort to make a strong narrative that you can experience by reading through all the lore entries and the weapons or the compendium. And there may be some clear, rough edges here and there. They are an independent studio, but it was never enough to overly frustrate me or to keep me from having a good time. I hope and assume the rest of the game will keep me entertained, and I hope this game can act as a sort of springboard for this team to make more great games in the future. The Souls-like renaissance is here. More and more teams are capturing more and more of the magic that FromSoft has created, and I'm getting more and more games that I love, and I couldn't be happier. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you like this video and you want to help me out, consider throwing a thumbs up down below, and it'd be appreciated if maybe you consider subscribing if you want to see the next video. I talk about all things video games, AAA games, indie games, retro games, you name it. I love talking about video games. I love making videos talking about video games, and just really enjoy the support, people commenting below and having a conversation with me. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.